and he's not the only one that's kind of has a lot on his plate. There's a number of coaches that are number of coaches that are on the hot seat, and we got to talk about it, man. We got to ask Alex, what are some of the names on the hot seat? Is it people that we, some of the bigger names, or are we looking at just some small guys?
I mean, there's some big names that I think should be on this list. And I think there's a couple kind of some of these middle of the road guys looking like a Dana Holgerson from Houston might be on the hot seat, which seems weird because they've been a good football team. But one of these teams that's kind of falling short of expectations, at least what they're supposed to be now. Dino Babers of Syracuse, or Babbers, however you say his name. He's kind of, he's your neck of the woods in the ACC there.
Oh, yeah.
You've pumped out NFL talent, and it hasn't shown results on the field for you guys, for Syracuse. So it's kind of a couple problems starting there. And Neil Brown of West Virginia is the other one I would throw out there right away. You've had guys come in left, right, and center, transfer guys, quarterbacks, all that, and you haven't been able to make it work. Right. That right there just screams hot seat. And especially with that conference being so wide open now and so up for the taking, if they can't make a run at it, it might spell the end for him.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely, man. You talk about Dino Babers. I mean, look, you and I both talked about Sean Tucker a year ago and how solid and great he was. Babers has had a couple pieces here and there. DeVito at QB, a couple of guys that potentially could go pro, but just has not been able to keep it together. He's 36-49 overall and 19-39 in the conference over the last 4 years. You know what I mean? And with the exception, I believe, once he hasn't finished over 7th in the ACC, and that you got to do better than that. And it hasn't been. Maybe a couple years ago, it was a stout ACC, and maybe it's getting back to that. But we've kind of been on some down years. There have been opportunities for Syracuse to do it. I mean, let's remember they did upset Clemson a couple years back, and I know they took them to the test, like I believe 2 years ago, if not last year. So,
last year it took everything Clemson had to escape them.
Right. So you absolutely have, but you got to do that. You got to do better. You got to do better. You got to get some W's. And I love that you said Neil Brown, my fiance or family, they all love him. And even Holgerson, honestly, because he came from West Virginia out there.
Yep.
But I want to stick with that. Holgerson, he was 8-5 this last year. But before that, it was
a 12-win season.
Right. Did his success work against him?
I think it absolutely did. And I think the main reason he's on the hot seat this year is that move to the Big 12. That is added pressure. Moving to that bigger conference against more big-time competition, especially off that 8-5 season.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit warmer than just warm here. I think it's fairly hot.
Right. And look, we saw he can get W's. He can put it together like he did at West Virginia, and he has to the Houston. But, you've been up here. You got to keep that stuff up. Winning is contagious. And if you're not winning, they will replace you. And Ben, I love this one too. I'm a huge Mario Cristobal fan. I loved him at Oregon, and the fact that he was able to come home to Miami. I had high expectations. Alex, I talked to you about it all offseason last year. I was really looking forward to him to do it, and they disappointed me. And I do think in the ACC, where you have a Florida State who's doing well, hopefully in Florida they're doing well, and I know that's not ACC, but in the state of Florida, there is pressure for them to succeed and win now. He's got his recruits. We thought he had his quarterback in Van Dyke, but he has to get it done, man.
Yeah, and I was right there with you. I was super high on Cristobal. I was thinking that they would push for that kind of go into that top level of the ACC. Obviously, that didn't happen. And again, that was a lot. We also thought Van Dyke was going to be a lot better than he was.
Yeah.
And Ben says it perfectly. Miami is that pressure cooker type job.
Yep.
If you're not getting it done, they won't hesitate to move on.
Right.
Now, it might be different with Cristobal, being that he is a Miami guy, all that. But that pressure is absolutely going to be on if he starts out struggling early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely see it. And hey, for him, we hope we can do better. But let's talk about, you mentioned at the beginning when you first started on this, there are some names that maybe are not on the list because maybe they're at bigger name schools, but they have been struggling. I know last year we talked about Steve Sarkisian and him, I think he had more of a successful season, but not to the standards of Texas. Brent Venables coming from all that success at Clemson and then going to Oklahoma. And look, here's another Eli Drinkowitz that he's talking about. I've heard names like this. Jimbo Fisher's another one. I've heard names like this that you need to, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe not Elijah Drinkowitz, but at the other three, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But if, you got it. Let's go. Hurry it up. It's definitely Jimbo.
Especially Jimbo. You had the number one recruiting class last year. You had 5-star after 5-star after 5-star on that team, and you pulled that performance last year.
Yeah.
Especially after beating Bama the year before. Clock's ticking. He's got to get rolling here. A couple guys we kind of mentioned before the show. Some of these guys are top tier guys, but they've had down years recently. Someone like a Dabo Sweeney might not necessarily be on the hot seat, but he might kind of look elsewhere here. Yeah. My big thing is I still think once Saban's gone, he's taking over at Bama because he played quarterback at Alabama.
Right.
So I think he's next in line for Bama. So I think they might be looking for somebody fairly soon here. My big one that might surprise a lot of people, Ryan Day.
At Ohio State?
Michigan and Ohio State, especially Michigan now that they're better, are viewing themselves on that rivalry, Big Ten championships, and national championships. Ohio State has been massacred the last 2 years against us and got into the playoff because USC couldn't beat Utah. Now, they almost beat Georgia. But if they lose to us again and that might cause them to miss the playoff, that might be enough. I don't think it will be, but that's somebody to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
And he's one of the top 5-10 coaches in college football.
Right.
But it's one of those schools where your standards are set so high that if you're not meeting that, they might pull the trigger.
That turnover, man, that's crazy to think about that. And we went from Holgorsen, who's bringing success to a team that, isn't really used to national success like he had Houston. And then you're coming to see some of these names. And Jimbo, 2020, they were right outside the Final Four, getting to the CFP. But then when you start saying Dabo Sweeney and Ryan Day, who have been two names that have been
juggernauts,
right. I mean, look.
Now, here's my one thing for Ryan Day is we're finally at this point now where there's no Urban Meyer recruits on this roster. The last couple of years have been Ryan Day's guys. When he still had a lot of Urban Meyer's guys, that's when you saw Justin Fields taking them very close to a national championship appearance, going toe-to-toe with Trevor Lawrence, playing some very good football, still dominating us.
Yeah.
Now that all those guys are out the door, we've obviously seen the tide turn in the rivalry, and back-to-back Big Ten championships that they missed out on. That might be, especially with the dominance they've had in the Big Ten in general for the last 20-plus years. 3 years missing out on that Big Ten championship might be enough for them to pull the trigger.
Wow. But that it shows that level of success, man.
Yeah.
If you get it up that high. Hey, shout out to Matt Patton, who's asking, who are you picking for the Big Ten West this year?
The last year of the Big Ten West as well, because
Mhm.
as the 2024 divisions are gone.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I don't know. That's a tough one because a lot of it depends on Matt Rule and
This is Nebraska.
Luke Fickell
Yep.
and what they do at their schools. If Ferentz can get it going at Iowa offensively there.
And that's his next question. Do you think there's any chance he retires this year?
I could see it. He's been there a long time. He's
I was about
not
to
getting
say.
any younger.
Yeah.
I could see it. As for the Big Ten West, for me, it's between Iowa and Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes down to if Iowa allows the offense to do what it can do.
Right.
If it's still that same awful scheme where the tight ends do well, but nobody else does well, then Purdue's taking the Big Ten West.
Yeah.
But if
I personally don't think Ferentz is gone. I think he's going to. I think he just can't. He's like Paterno, man. Once you leave, you might pass away, man. Like,
so. Yeah, I like what Iowa has, and I know that's slightly partial to McNamara and Eric All and those guys going there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think McNamara is the best quarterback they've had in a long time.
True.
They always do very well with tight ends. The offensive line's always solid. If you allow McNamara to pass that ball a bit more than Iowa's done, I think Iowa could be a very good football team next year. I'm talking like 8, 9, maybe 10 wins.
Right. I mean, look, your defense and your special teams lead the way each year. You don't need much from your quarterback, you know? I mean, come on. Look, 25 years is plenty. Ask Hayden Fry. Yep. Yep. As far as Big Ten West, for me, you have to put, as long as Iowa and Ferentz is there, that defense is stout. I love what McNamara is bringing. Look, as a Tar Heel fan and as a fan of Cincinnati and what they did a couple years ago, I'm looking at them, man. I'm looking at them to shock the world. We know they have one of the they have one of the top 5 running backs in Braylon Allen, man. And now you got Phil Longo out there who likes to have that fast-paced offense. And we know Luke Fickell, he's a player's coach, and he'll start up some new ingenious type of offense and things like that. So for me, Wisconsin, man, I'm saying watch out for them. I love it. I want to see if they can do it. And if Iowa can get McNamara going, I can see the two of them battling it out.
So. To me, I think the reason Purdue sneaks in there, they've got the best quarterback in the Big Ten West. Hudson Card going to them, I think gives them a massive shot to go win the Big Ten West again this year.
Yeah.
And that comment says it perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, because we got to remember they have lost talent. LaPorta was there for how many years and was a dominant force at tight end. Like, they've lost guys and key defensive pieces in Van Ness and
one other
guy.
Oh, Jack Campbell.
Jack Campbell to y'all.
I can't believe it took me that long to think of that.
That's your guy, right?
They lost a couple DBs too, if I'm not mistaken. Some solid, like a corner and a safety, I think. So they're missing some key pieces on that defense, but I mean, Iowa's one of those schools, kind of like Wisconsin. You get those certain positions where they just keep rotating guys in, and they all do well. Better than
McNamara.
Yeah, that's as a Michigan. I love McNamara, but we saw Hudson Card go toe to toe with Bryce Young last year, for 3 quarters. So, and he was solid when he played those other games until Quinn Ewers got back. I don't think it's that much of a difference between McNamara and Hudson Card, but I do think Hudson Card's a bit better.
We'll see. Definitely he's going to have a different talent. He's not going to have Bijan. He's not going to have who was there? Roshan Johnson. Yeah. Worthy at wide out. We'll see what he brings to the table.